Have you ever witnessed a true act of heroism? In a breathtaking moment at Riverside Hotel, a humble janitor named John defied the odds and saved a baby from drowning. But instead of praise, he faced an unexpected dismissal. Now, the truth unfolds as the hotel owner delves into the shocking events caught on camera. The sun was a blazing orb, casting its golden rays over the serene Riverside Hotel. The clear blue sky stretched endlessly, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers from the meticulously kept gardens. It was the perfect summer afternoon, one that made people forget their worries and simply bask in the warmth and beauty of the day. Around the large, sparkling pool, guests lounged on comfortable deck chairs, some under colorful umbrellas, others soaking up the sun. Laughter and chatter filled the air, accompanied by the occasional splash as children jumped into the water. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved gracefully among the guests, offering cool drinks and light snacks. In the background, almost blending into the scenery, was John, the hotel janitor. In his late 40s, John had a kind face, though it often went unnoticed by those around him. He wore his standard blue uniform, which had seen better days, and moved with quiet efficiency. John had worked at the Riverside Hotel for nearly a decade, his presence as constant as the changing seasons. John was sweeping the patio near the pool, his eyes occasionally drifting to the guests. He enjoyed these moments of relative calm, when he could watch the world go by. He noticed a young mother, probably in her early 30s, sitting by the pool with her infant daughter. The mother, engrossed in a conversation with another guest, seemed relaxed, occasionally glancing at her baby, who was playing on a colorful towel. The baby, a cherubic little girl with golden curls, was fascinated by everything around her. She gurgled happily, her tiny hands reaching out to grab at the air. John smiled to himself, remembering when his own children were that small. It was a time filled with joy and endless worry, a delicate balance between watching them grow and keeping them safe. As he continued to sweep, John's attention was caught by a sudden movement. The baby, now on her hands and knees, was crawling towards the pool. The mother, still deep in conversation, hadn't noticed. John's heart skipped a beat as he saw the tiny girl reach the edge of the pool, her curious fingers dipping into the water. The next few seconds seemed to stretch into eternity. The baby leaned forward, her balance shifting precariously. John dropped his broom and started running, his worn shoes slapping against the tiled floor. He shouted, a desperate cry to alert the mother, but the noise around the pool drowned his voice. Then, with a small splash, the baby fell into the water. Gasps of horror rippled through the crowd. Some guests stood frozen, their faces masks of shock, while others shouted for help. John reached the edge of the pool and dived in without hesitation. The cool water enveloped him as he opened his eyes, searching for the baby. He saw her, a small, struggling form sinking deeper. John swam with powerful strokes, his hand closing around the baby's tiny arm. He pulled her to his chest and kicked upwards, breaking the surface with a gasp. The baby was limp in his arms, her eyes closed. He swam to the edge and lifted her out, placing her gently on the ground. By now, the mother had realized what had happened. She rushed to John's side, her face pale with fear. "Oh my God, my baby," she cried, tears streaming down her face. John didn't waste a moment. He tilted the baby's head back, checking her airway, and began performing CPR. He pressed gently on her small chest, counting aloud, then breathed into her mouth, willing her to breathe. The crowd watched in tense silence, the minutes ticking by with agonizing slowness. Finally, the baby coughed, water spewing from her mouth. She took a shaky breath, then began to cry. The sound was the sweetest music to John's ears. The mother scooped her up, holding her close and sobbing with relief. Thank you so much," she kept repeating, her voice choked with emotion. John sat back, his heart pounding and his clothes soaked. He watched the mother comfort her baby, a sense of profound relief washing over him. Around him, the guests began to applaud, some coming forward to pat him on the back and express their gratitude. John smiled faintly, feeling a swell of pride. As the crowd began to disperse, the hotel manager, Mr. Thompson, arrived on the scene. A tall, stern man in his 50s, Mr. Thompson had a reputation for being strict and unyielding. He looked around, assessing the situation with a critical eye. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his tone sharp. One of the guests quickly explained what had happened, praising John's quick actions. Mr. Thompson's expression hardened as he turned to John. "Come with me," he said curtly, not waiting for a response. John followed Mr. Thompson into the hotel, his heart sinking. They entered the manager's office, a cold, impersonal room with stark white walls and a large desk. Mr. Thompson closed the door and turned to John, his face a mask of disapproval. "John, I've received numerous complaints about you leaving your post today," Mr. Thompson began. "You know our policy on staying in designated areas during work hours. Your actions, while commendable, violated this policy." John's mouth went dry. "Sir, Mr. Thompson held up a hand to silence him. "There's no excuse for leaving your assigned area. We have lifeguards and other staff trained for emergencies. You overstepped your duties and put the hotel at risk." John felt a surge of frustration and disbelief. "But sir, I saved that baby's life. She could have drowned if I hadn't acted." Mr. Thompson's gaze remained cold. "That may be true, but rules are rules. I'm afraid I have no choice but to dismiss you, effective immediately." John stared at the manager, his mind reeling. After nearly 10 years of dedicated service, this was how it ended. He swallowed hard, fighting back the sting of tears. "I understand," he said quietly. "I'll gather my things." He left the office, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. As he walked through the hotel, he saw staff members looking at him with sympathy, their whispers following him. He packed his belongings, his movements slow and deliberate, trying to process what had just happened. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden light over the grounds. John took a deep breath, the cool evening air helping to calm his racing thoughts. He glanced back at the hotel one last time, then walked away, unsure of what the future held but knowing he had done the right thing. As John disappeared down the road, the hotel buzzed with the news of his dismissal. Some were outraged, others resigned to the reality of their strict workplace. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of a much larger story, one that would reveal truths hidden beneath the surface and change their lives forever. The next day at the Riverside Hotel began as usual. The sun rose, casting a soft morning light over the property. Birds chirped, and the staff prepared for another busy day. But beneath the surface, there was a palpable tension, a whispering undercurrent among the employees. In the staff break room, a small group gathered, talking in hushed voices. Among them was Maria, a housekeeper who had been working at the hotel for nearly as long as John. Her kind eyes were clouded with worry as she spoke. "Can you believe they fired him? After everything he did?" Javier, one of the younger bellhops, shook his head. "It's unbelievable. John's always been one of the hardest workers here. And he saved that baby's life. How could they just let him go like that?" "Management doesn't care about what's right," said Claire, another housekeeper. "They only care about following the rules. It's not fair." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mr. Thompson, who walked into the room with his usual air of authority. The group fell silent, their eyes downcast. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "I expect everyone to get back to work. There's no time for gossip." As he turned to leave, Maria gathered her courage and spoke up. "Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, what happened to John was wrong. He saved that baby. He didn't deserve to be fired." Mr. Thompson paused, his back still to the group. "John violated hotel policy. That's all there is to it." Without another word, he walked out, leaving the staff in a heavy silence. Meanwhile, in a different part of the hotel, Mr. Smith, the owner, had returned from his business trip. He was a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and a calm demeanor. Unlike Mr. Thompson, Mr. Smith had a reputation for being fair and approachable. As he walked through the lobby, he noticed the subdued atmosphere and sensed something was amiss. He stopped by the front desk, where he found Lucy, the receptionist, looking troubled. "Good morning, Lucy," he greeted her with a warm smile. "Is everything all right?" Lucy hesitated, then decided to speak up. "Mr. Smith, there's something you should know. Yesterday, one of our janitors, John, saved a baby from drowning in the pool. But Mr. Thompson fired him for leaving his post." Mr. Smith's brows furrowed. "He fired him? For saving a child's life?" "Yes, sir," Lucy replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "John's a good man. Everyone here respects him. It just doesn't seem right." Mr. Smith nodded, his mind already working through the details. "Thank you for telling me, Lucy. I'll look into it." Determined to get to the bottom of the situation, Mr. Smith headed to his office. He pulled up the security footage from the previous day and began watching. The video showed John's quick reaction, diving into the pool and rescuing the baby, followed by the manager's harsh dismissal. Mr. Smith's expression grew more serious with each passing moment. After reviewing the footage, he called a meeting with Mr. Thompson. The manager arrived promptly, his demeanor confident. "You wanted to see me, sir?" "Yes, Mr. Thompson," Mr. Smith replied, his voice steady. "I've just reviewed the security footage from yesterday. I saw what happened with John." Mr. Thompson stiffened slightly. "I understand, sir. But as I explained, John violated hotel policy by leaving his assigned area. We have protocols in place for emergencies." Mr. Smith leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the manager. "Mr. Thompson, John saved a child's life. While protocols are important, so is recognizing the value of quick, decisive action in an emergency. Firing him for this was not the right decision." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "I was just following the rules, sir." "There are times when the spirit of the law is more important than the letter," Mr. Smith said firmly. "I intend to rectify this mistake. John's actions should be commended, not punished." With that, Mr. Smith ended the meeting and immediately reached out to John. He found John at his modest apartment, packing away his belongings from the hotel. The knock on the door startled John, and he was even more surprised to see Mr. Smith standing there. "Mr. Smith? What are you doing here?" John asked, confusion written on his face. "I came to apologize and to make things right," Mr. Smith said, his tone sincere. "John, I've seen the footage. What you did was heroic, and it's clear that you acted out of necessity. I want to offer you your job back, with a promotion and a raise as a token of our gratitude." John's eyes widened in disbelief. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Thank you." Mr. Smith smiled. "No, John. Thank you. We need more people like you at Riverside. People who are willing to do the right thing, even when it's not easy." John accepted the offer, his heart lifting with renewed hope. As he returned to the hotel, the staff welcomed him back with open arms. There were smiles, handshakes, and even a few tears. The atmosphere shifted, a sense of justice and camaraderie replacing the earlier tension. Later that day, Mr. Smith gathered the entire staff for a meeting. He stood before them, with John by his side. "Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday, John did something extraordinary. He saved a child's life. And while there was a misunderstanding regarding his dismissal, I want to make it clear that Riverside values courage and integrity above all." The staff erupted into applause, their respect for John evident in their eyes. Mr. Smith continued, "To ensure this doesn't happen again, we'll be revising our emergency protocols to allow for discretion in critical situations. I want everyone to know that we stand behind our employees who act with honor and bravery." John looked out at his colleagues, feeling a deep sense of belonging. He knew that this was more than just a job, it was a community that valued him for who he was and what he stood for. As the meeting concluded, Maria approached John, her eyes shining with admiration. "Welcome back, John. We're all so proud of you." "Thank you, Maria," John replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "It means a lot to have your support." As the sun set over the Riverside Hotel, casting long shadows and painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, the sense of justice and unity was palpable. John's return marked the beginning of a new chapter for the hotel, one where integrity and courage were celebrated, and where the staff felt valued and respected. This chapter in John's life, marked by the trials and triumphs of the past few days, was a testament to the power of doing the right thing, no matter the consequences. And as the night fell, the Riverside Hotel stood as a beacon of hope and fairness, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days following John's reinstatement brought a renewed sense of vitality to the Riverside Hotel. The sun continued to rise over the picturesque property, casting its golden glow on the lush gardens and the serene pool that had been the scene of such dramatic events. The hotel's guests went about their vacations, blissfully unaware of the internal upheavals. But among the staff, a sense of unity and renewed purpose began to take root. Mr. Smith, the owner, was not one to let matters rest. He understood that while the immediate issue had been resolved, there was more to uncover and learn from the incident. His decision to review the hotel's policies and ensure fair treatment for all employees was just the beginning. One quiet afternoon, Mr. Smith sat in his office, a spacious room filled with tasteful furnishings and large windows that overlooked the garden. He was deep in thought, considering the best ways to implement changes that would prevent future injustices. His desk was cluttered with reports, guest feedback forms, and a laptop with the security footage queued up once again. The knock on the door pulled him from his reverie. "Come in," he called, his voice even. Lucy, the receptionist, entered, carrying a stack of papers. "Mr. Smith, these are the latest guest satisfaction surveys," she said, placing them on his desk. "Thank you, Lucy," he replied with a nod. "How's everything at the front desk?" "It's been busy, but nothing we can't handle," she said with a smile. Then, hesitating for a moment, she added, "Mr. Smith, I wanted to say thank you for what you did for John. It meant a lot to all of us." Mr. Smith smiled warmly. "Thank you, Lucy. It was the right thing to do. And it's not just about John. It's about making sure everyone here feels valued and respected." As Lucy left, Mr. Smith turned his attention back to the security footage. He had watched it multiple times, but he felt there were still details to be gleaned. He replayed the moments before, during, and after the incident, taking notes and making observations. He noticed how some guests reacted with immediate concern, while others were slow to understand the gravity of the situation. He saw the varied responses from the staff, some frozen in shock, others rushing to assist once John had taken control. Most notably, he observed Mr. Thompson's behavior, from his initial dismissal of John to his indifferent handling of the aftermath. Determined to get a full picture, Mr. Smith decided to speak with those directly involved. His first stop was the pool area, where the lifeguard on duty that day was overseeing a group of children playing in the water. A young man in his mid-20s, Mark had been with the hotel for just over a year. "Mark, do you have a moment?" Mr. Smith asked, approaching the lifeguard station. "Of course, Mr. Smith," Mark replied, standing up and giving his full attention. "I've been reviewing the events of the other day," Mr. Smith began. "I'd like to hear your perspective on what happened." Mark nodded, taking a deep breath. "It all happened so fast. I was at the other end of the pool, helping a child who had scraped his knee. When I heard the splash and the shouting, I turned and saw John diving in. By the time I got there, he was already pulling the baby out. He reacted faster than anyone else could have." Mr. Smith listened intently. "Thank you, Mark. Your honesty is appreciated. I'm trying to understand how we can improve our response to such emergencies." Mark looked relieved. "I think having more training sessions would help. So everyone knows exactly what to do, and there's no confusion. And maybe some way for us to communicate quickly, like a whistle system or something." Mr. Smith made a note. That's a good idea. I'll look into it. Thank you, Mark. Next, Mr. Smith sought out Maria, the housekeeper who had spoken up during Mr. Thompson's reprimand. He found her in one of the guest rooms, methodically making the bed with the precision of someone who took great pride in her work. Maria, do you have a moment? Mr. Smith asked, standing in the doorway. Maria turned, a bit startled. Yes, Mr. Smith. How can I help you? I wanted to talk about the incident at the pool. You were one of the first to voice your concerns about John's dismissal. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Maria set down the pillow she was fluffing and faced Mr. Smith. John is a good man. He's always been kind and hard-working. What happened with Mr. Thompson, it wasn't fair. We were all upset by it. John did what anyone with a heart would do. Mr. Smith nodded. I appreciate your honesty, Maria. I'm trying to make changes to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Maria hesitated, then spoke up. Maybe more communication between management and staff. Sometimes it feels like we're working in separate worlds. If we understood each other better, maybe we could avoid misunderstandings like this. Mr. Smith smiled. That's a very good point. Thank you, Maria. I'll take that to heart. As Mr. Smith continued his conversations, he felt more confident in the changes he planned to implement. He gathered his notes and scheduled a meeting with the entire management team, including Mr. Thompson. The meeting was held in the conference room, a spacious area with a large table and comfortable chairs. Mr. Smith began by outlining the events and the responses he had gathered from the staff. He played the security footage again, this time pausing to highlight key moments and discuss what had happened. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Mr. Smith detailed the inconsistencies and the lack of compassion shown in his decision-making process. We need to do better, Mr. Smith said firmly. Our staff are not just employees, they are the backbone of this hotel. We need to support them and ensure they feel valued. After the meeting, Mr. Smith felt a sense of accomplishment. He had laid the groundwork for a more inclusive and supportive environment. He knew that the changes wouldn't happen overnight, but he was committed to seeing them through. The next day, Mr. Smith gathered the entire staff in the lobby for an announcement. John stood beside him, a symbol of the hotel's renewed commitment to integrity and respect. From this day forward, Mr. Smith began, we are implementing new policies to ensure that every employee feels valued and respected. We will have regular training sessions, open communication channels, and a renewed focus on working together as a team. The staff applauded, their spirits lifted by the promise of a better future. John looked around at his colleagues, feeling a deep sense of belonging and gratitude. He knew that the road ahead might still have challenges, but with Mr. Smith's support, they would face them together. As the crowd dispersed, Mr. Smith approached John. Thank you for your patience and your courage, John. You've inspired all of us. Thank you, Mr. Smith, John replied, his voice filled with emotion. I'm just glad to be back. The Riverside Hotel, now united and strengthened by the trials they had faced, stood ready to embrace a future built on trust, respect, and the unwavering belief in doing what was right. As the weeks passed, the changes at Riverside Hotel began to take shape. The staff underwent new training programs focused on emergency response and effective communication. A sense of unity and purpose settled over the hotel, creating an environment where everyone felt valued and respected. But beneath the surface, there were still unresolved tensions and questions about what had truly transpired. One afternoon, Mr. Smith sat in his office, reviewing the latest reports. He had made significant progress, but he knew there was more to uncover. He decided it was time to address the matter head-on and get to the bottom of what really happened on the day of the incident. He called for a staff meeting, inviting everyone who had been present that day. The meeting was held in the spacious conference room, where the atmosphere was a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The staff gathered, whispering among themselves as they waited for Mr. Smith to speak. John stood at the back, his presence a quiet reminder of the events that had set everything into motion. Mr. Smith began by addressing the room. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, we've made many changes to ensure that our staff and guests are safe and respected. Today, I want to revisit the events of that day and make sure we understand everything that happened, so we can move forward with complete transparency." He turned to the screen where the security footage had been queued up again. "We've all seen this footage, but I believe there are still details we need to discuss. I'd like to hear from everyone who was there." Mark, the lifeguard, was the first to speak. "When I saw the baby fall in, I was at the other end of the pool. By the time I realized what had happened, John was already in the water. He reacted faster than anyone else could have." Next, Maria spoke up. "I was cleaning a room nearby when I heard the commotion. I rushed out just in time to see John pulling the baby out of the pool. It was clear that he saved her life." Other staff members shared their observations, painting a picture of a chaotic but ultimately heroic event. As the testimonies continued, Mr. Smith noticed Mr. Thompson sitting quietly, a frown etched on his face. "Mr. Thompson," Mr. Smith said, turning to the manager. "You were in charge that day. Can you explain your actions?" Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, his voice strained. "I was following protocol. John left his post, and I had to enforce the rules. We have procedures for emergencies, and he didn't follow them. Did you consider the circumstances?" Mr. Smith asked. "A child's life was at stake." Mr. Thompson's face reddened. "I was thinking about the hotel's liability. If something had gone wrong, we could have been sued." Mr. Smith shook his head. "We can't let fear of liability override our moral responsibility. John acted out of necessity and saved a life. That should have been our priority." The room was silent as the staff absorbed Mr. Smith's words. The tension was palpable, but there was also a sense of relief as the truth came to light. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, realizing the weight of his decisions. "I understand now," Mr. Thompson said quietly. "I made a mistake. I should have recognized John's actions for what they were, heroic and necessary." Mr. Smith nodded. "We all make mistakes. What's important is that we learn from them and ensure they don't happen again." After the meeting, Mr. Smith approached John. "Thank you for your patience, John. Your courage and integrity have inspired us all." John smiled, feeling a sense of closure. "I'm just glad we can move forward together." With the truth unveiled and the lessons learned, the Riverside Hotel continued to thrive. The staff, now more united than ever, worked with renewed purpose. The changes implemented by Mr. Smith created a safer, more supportive environment for everyone. One evening, as the sun set over the hotel, casting a warm glow over the grounds, Mr. Smith sat with John in the garden. The air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sounds of laughter and music drifted from a nearby event. "You've done a lot for this place, John," Mr. Smith said, his voice thoughtful. "I want to do something for you." John looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean, sir?" Mr. Smith smiled. "I'd like to sponsor your children's education. It's a small way to show our gratitude for everything you've done." John's eyes widened, his voice choked with emotion. "Mr. Smith, I don't know what to say. Thank you. This means the world to me and my family." "It's the least we can do," Mr. Smith replied. "You've shown us what it means to act with integrity. We're proud to have you as part of our team." As the night grew darker and the stars began to twinkle overhead, the Riverside Hotel stood as a testament to the power of truth, courage, and unity. The staff, now more than just colleagues, were a family, bound together by the trials they had faced and the triumphs they had achieved. John's story became a legend among the guests and staff, a reminder that doing the right thing was always worth it, no matter the cost. And as the hotel continued to welcome new guests and create new memories, the lessons learned from that fateful day remained at the heart of everything they did. The Riverside Hotel, with its beautiful gardens, sparkling pool, and dedicated staff, was not just a place to stay, it was a place where people cared for one another, where integrity was valued, and where every action, no matter how small, made a difference. The morning light filtered gently through the windows of the Riverside Hotel, casting a warm glow over the lobby. The staff moved with a renewed sense of purpose, their steps lighter and their smiles brighter. The changes implemented by Mr. Smith had brought about a profound transformation, fostering an environment of respect and camaraderie. John arrived early, as he always did, ready to start his day. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee greeted him as he walked through the lobby. He exchanged friendly greetings with his colleagues, feeling a deep sense of belonging. Today, however, was not just any day. There was an air of anticipation that everyone seemed to share. As John made his way to the maintenance room, he was stopped by Maria. "Good morning, John," she said with a warm smile. "Are you ready for today?" John looked at her, puzzled. "Ready for what?" Maria's smile widened. "You'll see." Later that morning, Mr. Smith called another staff meeting. The team gathered in the conference room, curious and excited. The room buzzed with whispered speculations about what was to come. John stood near the back, still unsure of what was happening but feeling the same sense of anticipation. Mr. Smith entered the room, his presence commanding attention. He looked around at his staff, his face reflecting pride and gratitude. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "Today, we are here to recognize someone who has shown exceptional courage and integrity. Someone who embodies the values we hold dear at Riverside Hotel." He turned his gaze to John, who looked back in surprise. "John, please come forward." John hesitated, feeling a mix of emotions, but the encouraging smiles from his colleagues gave him the confidence to step forward. As he made his way to the front of the room, he could feel the weight of everyone's admiration. "John," Mr. Smith continued, "your actions on that fateful day not only saved a life but also reminded us all of the importance of doing what is right, no matter the circumstances. Your bravery and quick thinking are an inspiration to us all." Mr. Smith reached into a small box on the table and pulled out a plaque. It was engraved with John's name and the words "for outstanding bravery and integrity." The room erupted in applause as Mr. Smith handed the plaque to John. Overwhelmed with emotion, John took the plaque, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked with gratitude. "I'm honored to be part of this team. I couldn't have done it without the support of all of you." The applause grew louder, and John felt a surge of pride and belonging. As the clapping subsided, Mr. Smith raised his hand for silence. "There's more," he said, smiling. "In addition to this recognition, we are also granting John a paid vacation for him and his family. It's our way of saying thank you for everything you've done." The room once again filled with cheers and applause. John could hardly believe what he was hearing. He had never taken a proper vacation, always putting his work and family's needs first. The thought of spending quality time with his loved ones filled him with joy. After the meeting, John was surrounded by his colleagues, each one offering their congratulations and expressing their admiration. Maria hugged him, her eyes sparkling with pride. "You deserve this, John. Enjoy your time with your family." "I will, Maria." "Thank you," John replied, his heart full. That evening, John returned home with the plaque in the news. His wife, Sarah, and their 2 children, Emily and Jack, listened in amazement as he told them about the recognition and the upcoming vacation. "We're going on a vacation?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "Yes, sweetheart," John replied, smiling. "We're going to spend some quality time together as a family." Sarah hugged him tightly. "I'm so proud of you, John. You deserve this more than anyone." The following week, the family packed their bags and headed to a beautiful seaside resort, courtesy of the Riverside Hotel. The sound of waves crashing against the shore, the scent of salt in the air, and the sight of endless blue horizons brought a sense of peace and renewal to John and his family. They spent their days exploring the beach, building sandcastles, and enjoying each other's company. In the evenings, they watched the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. It was a time of healing and bonding, a reminder of the simple joys in life. One evening, as they sat around a bonfire on the beach, John reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The trials and triumphs, the moments of doubt and courage, all culminated in this beautiful chapter of his life. He looked at his family, their faces illuminated by the firelight, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. "Dad," Jack said, breaking the silence, "I'm really proud of you. You're a hero." John smiled, his eyes misting with tears. "Thank you, son. But I'm just doing what anyone would do. The real heroes are the people who support us and help us become better." As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, John realized that his journey was far from over. He had a family to care for, colleagues to support, and a hotel community that had become like family. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he was not alone. Back at the Riverside Hotel, the staff continued to work together, their bonds strengthened by the experiences they had shared. The lessons learned from John's actions and Mr. Smith's leadership created a lasting impact, fostering an environment where everyone felt valued and respected. The Riverside Hotel became known not just for its luxurious accommodations and beautiful scenery but for its commitment to integrity, courage, and unity. Guests who heard John's story were inspired by the values upheld by the hotel and its staff. And so, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the Riverside Hotel stood as a beacon of hope and compassion. It was a place where people cared for one another, where doing the right thing was always the priority, and where every action, no matter how small, made a difference. John's story became a legend, a testament to the power of integrity and the strength of community. And as the sun rose each morning, casting its golden light over the hotel, the spirit of unity and respect shone brightly, guiding the Riverside Hotel into a future filled with promise and hope.